Welcome to the Self Storage Lab. Today's episode zeroes in on using technology to slash expenses and redefine the role of the manager. We'll discuss everything from the latest tech innovations to old tech and DIY budget-friendly solutions that have stood the test of time. Plus, we'll dive into effective ways to incentivize managers in this evolving tech landscape. Joining us is Raheem Amer, president at MyPlace Self Storage. With a rich background that includes roles such as president of mini-mall storage properties and senior positions at Devon Self Storage and Extra Space Storage, Raheem brings a wealth of knowledge in operations, acquisitions, go-to-market strategy, and revenue management. Today, he'll share his insights on leveraging technology to enhance efficiency and managerial effectiveness.
Raheem, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I feel like this one's been a long time coming. Raheem's been a champion since like day one of Swivel almost. It's exciting because I know Raheem gets to talk about a lot of different tech at a lot of the industry events. So I'm excited to nerd out with everybody again this week.
Finally found time in his calendar. It's always packed with either speaking events or traveling. So I'm excited for this one.
No, thank you again. Thank you for the invite. I appreciate it. And I know this is a long time coming, but it's definitely a product that does not get light of day as much as I would like. And I think I've continued to speak about it and scream about it from the rooftops over the course of the last 3-4 years. And it surprises me how many people have still not adopted the omni-channel approach on communication.
That's a good segue for like one of my first questions, actually, just to kind of kick us off here. Like, as I kind of mentioned, I've had the pleasure of getting to hear you talk at a lot of industry events around a number of exciting technologies in the space, from drones to chatbots to value-based pricing. I'm curious if there are other areas of like technology in self-storage that you think are, need more light shined on them, or like in your experience, or just like a little underused today.
That's a good question, Mason. There's a bunch of different technology. I think over the course of the last 4 years since COVID, we've seen an acceleration of technology coming into this market, into the self-storage industry. What would have happened over the course of 10, 15 years, we think it has sort of been shrunk and accelerated. And all of that technology has hit the market over the course of the last 3 to 4 years. The technology is there. I think the adoption of that technology is the struggling piece right now. Is our owners and operators out there don't know how to utilize it, or even how to sync one technology with the second technology piece or the third one and make it hum so the customer does not feel the brunt of us trying out technology and feeling the pain because they can't get a hold of anybody because we're experimenting with multiple different fronts of technology pieces out there.
Man, there's so much to unpack there. I'm going to like take a step back because like I think it's interesting. Probably historically self-storage has been like a laggard industry, but I think actually to a point there are operators that are like super progressive, pushing the boundaries, and a lot of other industries are like looking at self-storage for those things. Like one of the examples that I've been using recently is I've started to see like rental car agencies go virtual. So like very similar to a virtually managed like self-storage location. Like you walk in, there's not a human there. They've got a screen, and then like a kiosk of some sort to give you the keys. And then very similar to again, self-storage, you still have to have humans on site at some point in time in order to like to refresh the car, just like you have to refresh and turn over a unit when somebody moves out. But that kind of brings me to kind of this like movement in the industry that we've seen from manned, unmanned. Like I'm curious if you could like talk to us about like what you think maybe the genesis of that is, and then later on we can unpack some of the struggles of just change management in the industry in general.
No, it's actually has become almost a cliche in the industry, is that everybody talks about unmanned. I think something we miss in the bigger picture of things is unmanned is not unmanaged. And I think that's the piece that everybody misses. And as the generation shift happens and we get more and more millennial generation starting to get into self-storage, one thing we have noticed is that, yeah, they adapt to technology very quickly, and almost to a point where they don't even want to talk to anybody. They'll text with you, they'll do all of that stuff. But when they run into a problem, if they can get a hold of you, going back to that earlier conversation that we were having, is that you want to have an omni-channel approach. So that way, when the customer runs into a problem, they can get a hold of somebody and there's a live person on the other end that can solve their problem. Because if they can't do that, that's when you run into problems, because they scale up and they'll use social media. They'll use every medium out there trying to get a hold of you, and they'll leave a trace behind. And that trace could be good or it could be bad, where everybody else can see all the frustration that they have gone through. And every one of your future customers now is being advised not to rent from you, or vice versa.
That's awesome. You've used it a couple of times where we're talking about omni-channel, and I know in like past episodes we've defined omni-channel, but like ultimately, I think the key like thing that we're trying to go after, and you keep touching on this, Raheem, is like putting the customer at the center of the universe, giving them the optionality to rent and communicate with you in whatever channel like they have a preference for, whether that be
Correct.
web chat, whether that be SMS, whether that be a phone call. And in some instances, like still just like walking into a facility and making a rental, right? Even in a
Correct.
unmanned or unattended.
You need to, yeah, you're absolutely right. You need to be able to utilize all different forms of communication, right? So, as you said, the chat bots, if they have a question, I'll give you an example of, my first interaction with the chat bot. And one of the first feedbacks I got was, it was right during COVID. We had a customer that asked a question about how high the ceiling height was inside a unit at like 2:51 a.m. And the chatbot immediately gave the answer, it's 8 foot high. And the customer at 2:56 a.m. went ahead and moved into the unit.
That's amazing. Those pajama shoppers.
Yeah, right. It's they were shopping at odd times of the day during the middle of COVID. People would just go about doing things at really odd times of the day. And when the office was closed or the call center was closed, all other communication mediums were closed. The chatbot was active, was answering the question for the customer. It solved the problem for the customer instead of waiting. Ideally, if I didn't have that chatbot, the customer would have waited till the next day, 9 a.m. My manager would have gotten into the property. They would have seen the note. They would have seen the message. They would have tried to get a hold of that customer back. Maybe they're at an office at that time or in the middle of something else. And we would have this back and forth conversation with the customer, trying to get them the answer. And then the customer moves on with their journey. Instead of that, the customer immediately got the answer, moved on with their journey as a customer, and moved into a unit and was already at the property at 8 a.m. in the morning before my manager even got the message, the first message, that this customer was even looking for a unit, and they had already moved in. So I think that's the point, right? Is it a chat bot? Does the customer wants to email you? Does the customer want to call you? Do they want to do a FaceTime? Whatever medium the customer wants to use, we should be connected, and there should be a smooth interaction between one platform to the next platform, so the customer doesn't feel the brunt of us trying to figure out how we're utilizing these different software pieces.
Those are all good points, Raheem. And I think, to that point though, I think, going back to the unmanned does not mean unmanaged and whatnot. There still seems like, for operators that are in the game already trying to take advantage, right, of more of these type of technologies that are available out there, or even some of the newcomers to the industry. I guess, like, when it comes to technology adoption and making that switch, what are potentially like some key factors, key things to consider that determine a successful rollout across, your facilities or your portfolio. Because I do still think that, people struggle with the fact of trying to understand, like, hey, how much is feasible? What should I be thinking about, et cetera?
Yes, and I think it has to do each vendor, each operator is going to answer that question differently because you need to have the skill set on board that can help transform that software and help understand all the friction points that the customer is going to face. If you don't have it, that's the other part is that you have these podcasts, you have multiple different webinars, we have all of the different wealth of knowledge that's in the self-storage industry. Are you leveraging and are you tapping into that, trying to help understand how other people have faced the same challenges and how have they overcome those challenges? And I think that's the part that I see many operators struggle. And over the course of the last 3 to 4 years, as I speak at different SSA events, it still amazes me how many operators I run into that I have talked to, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and they're still on that first step of, yeah, I need to do this, and I still haven't. Well, why haven't you? We lay down the path. We have all of this help. We have all of these resources, but they're afraid to take that first initial step. And software is always software is a change, and it's always challenging of the when they don't know what's the unknown, what's on the other side. So people just prefer to stay in the norm and say, hey, I'll just keep the status quo and I'll just keep moving forward, even though the customer, especially because the customer is not the one that's coming to you telling you, hey, can you get me a better access point? Can you get me a better system that solves all of these problems? Unless you sit back and you actually reach out to those customers and you talk to those customers, you really are not going to get that feedback. Customers not going to pick up the phone and go, hey, it'd be great if you had this software. It'd be great if you had this access process. It'd be great if you gave me this technology that I could leverage. They're never going to tell you that because they don't even know. 83% of the customer base that we have has never rented in self-storage. So why would they know what is different or what is not? So it comes to us leveraging all of these different platforms, these different podcasts, the different webinars, and try to understand how do we be in the forefront and how can we be leading the charge and helping those customers in whatever way we can so they can rent easier, faster, and bring revenue to us to the bottom line.
Right. I think you just nailed it, right? Like at the end of the day, this is a decision that ultimately, like some of those people that are in the, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of bucket. Like we've got to hit on how this, has a cost benefit in it. So I'm curious, like, and maybe you mentioned like a new, say, gate or access system being implemented. Maybe we use that as an example, or if you have something else that you want to go into, like, how do you think about like conducting that cost benefit analysis of implementing a new technology across your organization?
I think, again, it has to do with looking at that advanced technology and seeing how it will help you with occupancy rates. Does it help you reduce operational cost? Does it improve customer satisfaction? And at the end of the day, how does that translate to a better ROI? And I think all of those sort of go into the format as you're making that decision. So for us, the gate system that you just talked about, we do have a gate system. We use OpenText CIA system. And it's a great technology piece because I get visibility as, again, we have a spoken hub model. So we have properties and we have unmanned properties around it. And the CIA systems gives me the ability to look at all my properties across the country and quickly find out which gates are down, which gates are potentially causing problems, which customers are on the property, how often a customer is coming on the property, which customers are leveraging the technology more. The CIA system, I can approach a gate and I don't even have to press the keypad. It prompts me on my cell phone that, are you at the property? I hit yes, and the gate opens and I'm on the property, right? So all of those different technology pieces help me understand the product that I have, the customer base that's utilizing that product, so I can be much more specific and targeted on which rate increases I'm doing, to whom, when. All of those come into play. With the visibility to the map, I know before a customer reaches out and tells me that a gate is down, I've already been alerted through the system that my gate is down. So I'm already, proactively approaching it. In past, we would wait till a customer called us and say, oh yeah, your gate's been down. And by the way, it's been down for a week. And now we're like, oh, we're reacting. We're calling, this way, when a customer calls and goes, hey, by the way, do you know? Oh yeah, we already have it. They've already ordered the part. They're coming in tomorrow. They're installing it. It's a different experience for the customer. It's a different process for us. And that's how software can help you manage your business. And without that kind of visibility in the software, we could not continue to grow as fast as we have. This gives us the ability to say, hey, these are the properties I can continue. I can add more because I have the leverage and I have the people that can be out there and take care of that utilizing the software.
So, Raheem, I'm curious. You've talked about you've kind of run your ROI test to see if it's feasible. Let's say you decide that you want to create a test. So, as an example, there's this new tractor beam technology that's coming out that allows people to beam their stuff into their unit. And you're like, man, this is going to be huge for us. We're going to be the first people to do it. We want to test it. How do you think about
awesome. I want a tractor. I don't know what a tractor beam technology does, but let's get it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. Beam me up, Scotty. Kind of technology.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Star Trek. I'm thinking like super future here, right? So no one else is doing this just yet, but you think it's going to be huge. How do you think about planning a test? How are you going to roll that out? Small rollout versus large. How do you think about testing that, and what would make it successful to roll out portfolio wide?
Yeah, I think that starts out with, first of all, the technology piece, right? Is how does it work? How does the customer interact with that technology? How would they utilize it? Does the technology actually work, or does the product, as they're beaming it into the property, actually shows up in the middle of the wall? What's the what has the research shown? Does this product actually work? How well does it work? How easy is it to utilize? How much expertise do you need? What software do you need? What's the cost going to be at the end of it, right? And then how does all of that translate into an ROI for us? I think all of those pieces sort of come into play. All of the different variables come into play. And then you decide if this is something that you want to leverage or not.
And do you test that with a subset of your stores first to see?
Or always. Yeah, we do an A/B testing. In most cases, is we'll test it at some properties where, for again, in this scenario, it would be somewhere where we just put up a QR code and people go at it, and without any human interaction. Then we'll also test it at properties where we do have human interaction, where they explain the process, explain how everything's going to work. And then, we'll have the sample properties that we're not really doing anything in, and we'll try to see what kind of return did we get, and what kind of pain point did we solve, and how much did it cost us to solve that pain point.
Do you whenever you're rolling out to your facilities and all that, is there a bottleneck or pinch point? They have to it's not only learning how to use a new technology, and you're also focused on the ROI and answering all these questions, but now adding humans right into the equation. You're the managers, the folks that are running your stores on a day to day. They're, let's say you have a 30, 40 facility portfolio. So that means 40 or, double. Maybe you have 2 people per store. So how do you manage getting them up to speed? And are you measuring also their performance.
Yes.
When it comes to like, looking at new technology that you're using, like what does that look like?
Yeah, I think it again. First is the testing part. Then it's the whole communication part. So if we test it and we find out that there's feasibility, that this is a product, this is a software we would like to move forward with, then the communication piece comes in. Is how are you going to communicate that and the changes to all the different customer base, right? And so that way they don't find out about it when they get to the property. That we want them to know about it before they get to the property. Then the training piece of the staff comes into play. Is how do you ensure that your staff is fully trained on the new systems? So what you don't want, and again, as you know, with any software, if your team cannot explain the product, you've already lost the trust of the customer. And if you lose the trust of the customer is not going to touch that software, that product, right? So your team has to be efficient. They have to be the go-to expert, the SMEs as we call it, subject matter expert on the product. They need to know how to overcome some of the challenges that the customer is going to run into. So what training have you implemented to go through all of that? You can't just throw a operations guide and I've seen some operators do that, right? They just throw an operations manual at the employee and go, "Hey, you learn it because I don't know how to do this, so I need you to become the SME. But here, I'm not going to teach you. I need you to teach me," kind of thing. And then the last step in all of this would be the feedback. Is that you got to have a communication loop on not just with the vendor, but also with your frontline staff and your customer base. Is you're talking to all three different levels and trying to understand what are the pain points, what are the friction points, what else can we do to improve the product. I'll give you another one that we're in the process of testing right now. I don't know how much you know about the RaFa system that's out there, especially designed for unmanned properties. It helps them go through the whole walkthrough process. And we're getting real life updates as a manager finishes a walkthrough. We get, and we were able to give them feedback on, we need to add different level of brand awareness, brand qualities, and brand standards. So they were, based on our feedback, the team was able to add that item onto their platform. So now we don't just get a walkthrough, we also get pictures of the property showing what the condition of the property is. I couldn't tell you how many times I would visit a property and I find out that the landscaper hadn't been there, or we have a broken door, the gate is now working. It's like, if I knew about this before I came to this property, I would have already actioned multiple different levels of partnership and gotten these issues fixed. For us to wait till we get to a property, find these issues, that's a huge problem for me. So what the RaFa system has done for us is that it brings that communication on a bi-weekly basis to our fingertips. We know exactly what the problem is. We know exactly what the issue is. We know exactly who is solving the problem and at what stage it is. All of those, right? So we were, again, because the feedback is we were able to give them feedback. They were receptive as the owners of the product. They were receptive on accepting that information and making changes to their product, and made huge improvements in the last 3 to 4 months. And again, it's a great product, and I think it's definitely a game changer out there for a lot of these unmanned properties and even manned properties.
I love that. Just to make sure everybody that's listening, I believe RaFa is a technology from Sparebox Technologies, right? For like task management, workflow management, etc. So if you don't know about Sparebox, go check them out. We like the Sparebox team in general.
Yeah,
I also want
Jackson.
Really quickly before we move on. Heck yeah! There's a dictionary moment just a second ago because I learned a new term of SMEEsh. Is that what you said? SMEEsh.
SME. 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 Subject matter expert.
That's awesome. I love that. So just adding that to the dictionary. I'd never heard that acronym before.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was like, I brought a note to just like, I need to ask Raheem about that. So thank you for bringing that up.
It's
Yeah,
part of learning.
today
And
we've had,
is part of learning and development. Yes.
that's awesome. We've had new words. We got a new technology that we invented with the tractor beam technology. This is awesome.
go trademark that, Kyle. Raheem, so following along with like all this that you said, I mean, this is fascinating. So I'm curious from your perspective, you've been doing this for a couple years. Like, how would you say the role of the manager, like you mentioned, like frontline employees, like how has that evolved with the inception of all of these new technologies coming into the industry and all the different ways that you can leverage and kind of streamline processes? Like, how have you seen the role of the manager evolve or shift in response to all of this?
I think when I first came into the industry about 10 years ago, the legacy manager that used to work in properties at that time, where you had the wife running the front, the husband was cleaning the property and running the property in the background. I think we have seen a huge shift where the managers that we bring on today are much more sales driven, understand technology and how to utilize technology. And as we continue to add layers and layers of different technology pieces on top of each other, we need that kind of a management style, right? It's not just coming in and just running papers anymore. It's about how do you overcome objections for the customer? How do you connect with the customer? How do you build trust with the customer, especially when they have to leverage with all of these different technology pieces? And it needs and requires a different skill set, and that's what's important out there, right? So we look for those changes, we look for those skill sets as we hire new employees currently.
No, I love that. I think I like to talk a lot of times about, technology or automations in general, like freeing us up to have more human moments, right? You don't have to worry about the payments being made. You don't got to worry about, like, say, the gates opening or whatever the paper pushing that we talk about here. You get that opportunity to like meet a customer where they are, whether that be on the phone, whether that be via text message, whether that be at the location, et cetera. And like really, a lot of times people are using self storage as a product, and times not always, like I'm not that person, but in times that are hard for them. But the ability to like show up as a human and be empathetic, like I think you have an opportunity to like make a lasting impression, have a brand, go get a review from this individual, and then start that cycle over and over again, which is awesome.
It's huge. The way I look at it is we're not technically selling three walls and a door like we used to. The customer base need to understand is that they have already looked at all different options of what they can do with their priceless items that they're trying to store. They've looked at, can I leave it in my garage? Can I leave it in my attic, in my basement? And they've decided to use the most expensive option available, which is I'm going to take my items now and lease a spot and put all of those items in that unit and pay you for it. So I think there's a shift that needs to happen with that, is that how do we give them that same experience that they're used to with all different aspects of everything else that they're interacting with? How do we connect with the customer? How does the frontline manager help solve the problem that they're going through? Every one of the customers that's looking to store is going through some kind of a change in their life. And, I can't tell you how many times talking to customers, I've had customers cry on my shoulder. I mean, this is just a totally different industry. You don't see that in the restaurant industry. You don't see that in the oil change industry. Some of the industries that I came from, this is a little bit of a different aspect of the business, and I think it resonates with me, and I think resonates with a lot of other folks that are part of the self-storage industry, and I think we talk about that. When we're at the SSA events and we're at different conferences, we all discuss how the self-storage industry is just a hidden gem out there, and I think it has to do with we get to be there to solve a problem for a customer, and we get to be the knight in the shining armor, and you know, a- and we make good money at it, on the sidelines. So
Yeah, not
it
all
checks off
heroes
a
wear
lot of
capes.
different boxes.
Yeah, exactly. Not all heroes have to wear capes, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, for me, self storage is an extension of my house, right? Like I get to have like a smaller footprint and put some of my gear, my camping gear, et cetera, in self storage, and it's like a closet, and so it's like part of my home, which is like an interesting impact to make on an individual in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we get a hot take real quick?
Oh, hot take!
I just, I just.
Where's the sound effect for that one?
Hold on. I don't know if it's a hot take, more of like I'm gonna ask a question and it might ruffle some feathers. So Raheem, I want your hot take. What are your thoughts, Mason? You just talking about like how it's an extension of your home made me think of like some of the players out there that are trying to like democratize, like kind of like split apart self-storage, kind of like Airbnb, or what is it? Like, is it kind of like Airbnb self-storage where like people rent out their space,
an
like
Uber, an Uber or an Airbnb, right?
Uber,
where you've got like
Uber.
an excess of an
Right.
asset that you're
Right.
like renting out.
Like, what do you think about that type of business model, and or just kind of folks out there, Silicon Valley, trying to disrupt the industry?
During my tenure, I've seen and heard of multiple different folks. Clutter comes to mind. There's been a lot of different folks that have sort of tried to come into the market and trying to make a change. Some are successful, some are not. You should. That's one thing uh, that at least I do that's a little bit different is I like to look at other industries and try to see. So, for example, you brought the Airbnb. When I was with the REIT, we actually used the Airbnb model to help redesign our website. We took a lot of feedback from what, at that time, the website concept was there, but Amazon and Airbnb were doing something that was very, very innovative and different. So learning from other industries is definitely a huge plus. I like to understand, I like to go on different podcasts with different industries, try to understand how they're approaching the whole customer experience, how they're approaching, technology, how they're approaching different entries into their market, and how they're shifting, how do we zig and zag to overcome some of the challenges. There's a lot of good data out there, and there's good information and good learning for all of us. We just need to keep our eyes wide open and try to understand what else people are doing. When we originally started the conversation with Swivel and Chatbot, before that, we were with this other chatbot company, and they had primarily been in the dental business and the plumber business. They had not even thought about the self storage industry. So they hadn't even looked at the self storage industry. And the reason I got connected with them is because I was looking at other industries, and that's where I saw it. And I saw the value of what chatbot could bring. They didn't have all the bells and whistles that Swivel did, but that's the first door that I opened, right? It's like, oh, we need a chatbot. We're seeing customer bases shift when customers come to our property, how they come, how they want answers immediately. All of that is shifting right in the middle of COVID. So how do we address that? And chatbot was the solution. And then from there, that opened, when I saw the struggles and I saw that chatbot didn't solve all the problems, then I started looking, okay, what else? What's the next iteration? What's the next step? And that's when I ran into you guys. And it's I think we've come a long way in the last 4 years. I think it's actually been exactly 4 years. Because those are the kind of things that you can learn by continuing to look outside the industry, continue to ask questions, and continue to push yourself. And that's something that some of us do, and not a lot of the other operators do. And I think that's the challenge that I have for everyone is we can all grow, especially with the communication that we have in this industry and how much everybody helps each other out. If we all did that, we could accelerate at a very fast pace.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time. I mean, just a couple of things just internally, we do what you just said all the time, right? We're always looking at other verticals and other examples to go, or is there inspiration that we can take from those verticals? I mean, you mentioned about 4 years ago is probably when we started engaging, and we're no longer just a chatbot company, right? We're a full engagement platform, multiple channels coming in. We do, review solicitation, referral solicitation, reputation management. It's a whole breadth of feature sets that have come in from looking at other industries and what people are doing in other industries and going, how do we take the best of the best and make it, specific for the self-storage industry and do things that are really unique and different. I want to take a step back about balancing innovation with budget, because at the end of the day, all these things are kind of, we talked about ROI. I'm just kind of curious, innovation in tech is cool. Like, I'm a technologist. I mean, shoot, I spent $3,500 on a damn Apple Vision Pro just because I wanted something cool on my damn face. But there's a balancing act in business, not in personal life. How do you think about that balance of just what the coolness and the latest thing is to what is necessary to stay within a budget, or even planning for 6, 8, 12, 18 months down the line, going, I know I want to include this new innovation, but we're running a business here that CapEx cost might not be efficient this quarter. I've got to wait till next year sometime.
Yeah. And, again, as you approach different technology, I think, number one, you got to look at what are the key features and benefits does this technology offer, right? Number two would be, how easy is it to integrate with my existing system? Whatever PMS system I'm using, does it actually work with it? I can tell you that as we were in the process of looking at another technology piece, we had to cut 2 vendors out of the conversation because they could not connect into our current PMS. Automatically, though, even though they had a better product, they're automatically disqualified because that's not something we want to go down at this point. So that conversation
it doesn't work for you.
Yeah, it automatically disqualifies them. Then what kind of support and training is being provided by the vendor, and what are the training and support that we need to create for, going back to what Rudy said, right? What do we need to do for our frontline teams? What support do we need to give them? And then what are the costs, as you said, right? What are the costs, including maintenance, upgrades that we need to do on a regular basis? And what is the CapEx cost of that going to entail? And then last but not least, the one thing that we look at is it scalable with my business? If I'm going to continue to grow, will this company and this product keep up with me? Or do I need to, it can only take me to a certain level and then I have to upgrade to a totally different company, right? And what is that cost for me to shift? And maybe I just need to shift to that other company now, even though it's be more expensive, because on the long run, with the training cost, with the CapEx cost, all of that, it actually makes more sense to go with that other company now versus going to a smaller company and then having to shift in a year's time to this bigger company. So all of those sort of come into play for me before I make that decision. Does that help?
No, I love that. I appreciate it. And, coming back to the idea that at the end of the day, I literally said this in a meeting to our internal team. It's the tool is only as good as the buy-in and the usage internally. You can buy this amazing, cool, wizard tractor beam supply thing, but if people aren't buying into it and utilizing it internally, then what was the point of spending the money on that?
you bring up a very good point. So there's this conversation that goes around, right, about the whole drone technology. And that's something that we looked at. It's a great technology. It's great to have, especially at unmanned properties. But then when you look at the product, and you look at that each one of them costs you $35,000 and then a $5,000 investment on a yearly basis. And you're going, wait a minute, is the ROI there? No. And I think the RaFa system sort of came in to help solve that problem for us, because we were looking at it, it's like, we looked at it, hey, it's a Swedish company. They're not based out of here. Can I build something here that can solve the same problem? Couldn't find anybody else that could do it at a cheaper price point. And then it's like, okay, am I really going to take a 100-unit property, 200-unit property, 400-unit property, and put in $30,000 to $35,000 to get a drone system that somebody might just take a BB gun and shoot at and break it, and then I have to replace it all over again? The pain didn't, there wasn't enough pain for that to be solved with that price point. So then we moved on from that conversation. So I think that sort of helps answer that, right? It's not just because there's a technology piece does not mean we need to tap into it. The question is, how does it solve it? And what is the ongoing cost? What is the training cost? What's the maintenance cost? All of those come into play.
No, it's a perfect example. And this actually brings me to another question that I have is like, I think I personally, and like knowing you a little bit, Raheem, as well too, like tend to like always lean into technology. But the question I have is like, sometimes the technology is not the solution, or like the thing that is all, maybe it is sometimes using what is existing. It's not broken. So I'm curious if you have an example of like an older tech or some type of a DIY solution that like just has proven to pass the test of time.
Yes, I actually do. Going back to the unmanned properties, right? It's one of the biggest piece and one of the biggest issues that we struggle with is, how do you get through the last inch? And the last inch being the door, when a customer, has already gone through the process of renting online, because you have that software piece where they can rent online, they receive a digital code to get through the gate. Great, you solve that problem. They can access the property using the gate code that you provided them. They don't need to interact with anybody. You got QR codes everywhere. You can FaceTime them. They can talk to a live person if need be. They can do all of that stuff. But then they get to the door, and if I don't have anybody at the door to open that lock, they can't get through it. So we looked at technology, right? We looked at
all that to get somebody there and not let them open the door.
Right. And that does, again, you invested in all of that technology. You got through all of those problems, but then they get to the gate, to the door. And unless somebody, and the solution in most cases that other people were using was, oh, we need to schedule when you need to be at the property. Wait, that completely defeats the purpose of it being unmanned and having the frictionless process. Now I have to call the customer, plan it out on, today's Thursday, Friday at 5 p.m. I'm going to be at the property. Please be there. And then you're expecting that the customer's actually going to show up right on time. If not, you have the manager sitting there waiting for them. If they're running late, whatever, where they should be doing 10 other things, they can't because they're stuck at the property waiting for the customer. So there's all these solutions out there, right? You have Nokia, you have all of these other Bluetooth technology that solves the problem. But then again, we ran into the same issue, is that's great technology, but I already have my acquisition properties are already 95% occupied. So now I have to go to every one of those customers, knock on their door and tell them, hey, by the way, I need to get access to your unit. Again, I'm causing friction. I'm causing pain. And what I look for is look to add technology without causing pain to a customer. Because if you cause pain to a customer, they're just going to move out, right? You want them to store it and forget it. And if they have to think about the storage, they're thinking about, oh my God, I'm spending $100 every month on this unit. Do I really need it? I don't want them thinking about that. So that's what happened when we started looking at this Bluetooth technologies. Every single time I would have to go in, I would add that. I would need to have better, especially if we're in secondary and tertiary markets. It's trying to get internet service to every unit was extremely challenging. So how do you get through all of that? And we found a easy, low tech with some technology pieces on there, which was Davinci, and that sort of solved our problem. Is
I
that
knew that's where we're going. I was
right?
literally at the tip of my tongue.
Yeah, the customer just texts, they get the code, they move in, our units stay protected, because before that, our other solution was extremely low tech, was basically a zip tie to close the unit out. That's it, right? We just put a zip tie there and we said, hey, the customer wants to get in, they'll break the zip tie, they'll get in, solved my problem. But it's still, it doesn't protect the unit. It doesn't, in these unmanned properties, I don't know who's coming. I don't know who's going. I don't want people moving into the wrong unit. I don't want to find out about the wrong unit at a later time. Now I'm in auction process. It creates liability risk for me. All of those things. Yeah, it still solved the problem and it was a headache-free option for me. But it caused other friction items for me. So the Davinci option solved the problem. It was low tech, and I could go into any property and execute it immediately. I didn't have to bother a customer. I didn't have to, do anything that would cause any kind of friction to our new customer moving in. It was pretty easy technology to execute. So that would be the prime example of what you're talking about, Mason.
No, it's perfect. I actually store at a facility that that does use the Noki technology, and I love it. But like as a digital native, it's cool. But every time that I think about that problem, I'm like, this is so over engineered. It's ridiculous. And like Davinci, I love how simple it is, right? You have a box on a wall for somebody to drop the red locks in, all the different things that they do. It's just so simple and it works. And, sometimes you don't have to overthink about it. So that's awesome.
That brings me to a interesting point where you're just going through that example, Raheem. Whenever we're talking about the cost benefit and you're thinking about adding a new technology, how much of considering, hey, is this technology going to alienate our existing customers? What percent is it going to alienate? How does that come into play in that formula, or how you're thinking about things?
There's no percent. If it alienates a customer, it's a no-go for us, right? We look at the how does this solve the problem, and how many touch points does it do I need to do with the customer to solve this? And if it takes any kind of touch points and cause any kind of problems to the customer and doesn't solve it, it's a no-go. I'll give you. You guys want to hear a story?
Please.
We're here for stories. We're here for stories.
All right. So there's this will be Rudy. This will help you here. So there's a traveler, and he's traveling through the land, and he gets thirsty, and he sees this farm on the horizon. So he starts walking towards the farm. As he's approaching the deck, front door, he sees the farmer rocking back and forth on his rocking chair. And right next to the farmer is a dog. He's just lying there on the ground. And every so often, the dog just lets out a little whining noise, right? So the traveler approaches the farmer and goes, "Hey, farmer, I'm traveling. I'm thirsty. Can I get a glass of water?" The farmer says, "No problem," goes inside, grabs a glass of water, comes out, gives it to the traveler. Traveler drinks it, thanks him. And as he's turning around the whole time, every few minutes, right, the dog's just lets out a little howl, but he's just lying there on the ground. So as a traveler's turning around, he goes, "I got to ask this question." So he turns around, looks at the farmer and goes, "Hey, what's wrong with your dog?" And the farmer looks down at the dog and goes, "Oh, him. There's nothing wrong with him. He's just lying on a piece of nail." He goes, "And what?" The farmer goes, "Yeah, it's just pinching him, so that's why he's howling." He's like, "Why doesn't he get up and move?" He goes, "Well, you gotta understand. That nail is pinching him. It's just not pinching him enough that he wants to get up and move." And that is a true example of our revenue management strategy, is that we want to cost customers a little pain with ECRIs, but we don't want to cause them enough pain that they get up and they move, right? So it sort of helps pain. So that's why every time I rather give them a little bit of that nail prick with an ECRI versus technology piece, because the technology doesn't really do that for me, right? The customer is the one paying. So I rather the pain point be the ECRI than any technology. The technology needs to be a mute point. Hopefully that helps.
No,
I think you were done. The podcast is over.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. I'm like, can we add a story time to every podcast episode? That was awesome.
I love it.
I appreciate it.
I love it.
I got one last thing to maybe potentially close this out, and this is kind of like a rapid fire. I haven't ever done this on a podcast, but I'm going to name just like a couple of different technology systems, and maybe like on a scale of like 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, whichever one feels right. Like, you know, give me like how important you think this is for an operator to think about or start to implement. And at some point in time, I'm probably going to miss some, you know, at the end. Rodolfo, Kyle, you guys throw some out there at Raheem to kind of do. The first one I have is just a project management system.
So you said 1 through 5, as in 1 being the most important or 5 being the most important?
Let's do 5 being the most important.
Got it. Okay. So ask me that question again.
Yeah. So 1 to 5 project management system. How important is that?
That's a tough one. Here's why. Because I think it's different for each operator. The size of the operator, the bigger the operator is, the more important it becomes. So when I answer this question, I'm sort of answering it for us. So for us, it would be a 3.5. But for somebody else, it might be a 5 because they're at that scale and they need that help.
That's awesome. Next one on my list is a data analytics system or like some type of reporting system.
Oh, 5. Everybody is a 5 on that one. You got to have that because the data tells you what you need to do next. And there's so many operators that either collect the data, but they don't know how to analyze it, or they're not even collecting the data. The reason the REITs do really, really well is because they don't just collect the data, but that data talks to each other and actually paints the picture of what they need to do next. And that's one of the biggest problems that you see with large operators and small operators is that they're getting better at it. But unless you build a system and a base where all the data comes together and can talk to each other and let AI run its course and give you that information of what you need to do next. Extremely.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, as a data scientist, data runs my brain most of the time. I'm going to group kind of a number of technologies for this next one, but like we can break it out and really the kind of core concept here is like energy efficiency. And what I mean by that is like LED lighting, solar panels, smart thermostats. I'm curious kind of just 1 to 5, how you think about that.
Yeah, I would say it's a 3. Only because we don't, in self-storage, you don't use a whole lot of electricity unless you're doing something really goofy. So it's good to have. And as you are a bigger operator, it's a great to have, but not everybody needs it.
No, that's a good point. This one also is kind of grouped, and maybe it makes sense to break it down, but like security and monitoring as a group. And I mean like surveillance cameras, motion sensors, smart locks, etc.
Yeah, 5.
Awesome. I don't really. Anybody else have categories they want to throw at Raheem for the kind of rapid fire here?
I got 3.
Yeah, go for it.
Chatbot.
Oh, nice. A communications platform.
Got to have a communication platform, right? There's light switch out there. They're doing FaceTiming through QR codes now. You got to have a call center. The whole communication piece. That's a huge one that a lot of people miss.
Yeah, I think we're even powering like the QR codes for the live switch for you guys, right?
Perfect. Yep.
Yeah.
So that website, you talk to customers and you talk to operators and you tell them how important is landscaping for you, and every single one of them is going to tell you, oh, extremely important. I'm spending money on landscaping. I go, okay, great. So have you landscaped your website? Have you actually worked on your website? Because now 90% of your customers are interacting with you on the website. So have you looked at it with that same lens and same viewpoint and addressed that situation? And they get this deer in the headlight look. It's like they don't even think about it in that format. And our website now is our storefront. And how a customer interacts with that is extremely important, because before they would walk in the door, and that's why landscaping was important. But now they're walking in through your website. And if your website can't keep up, can't do the stuff, or doesn't showcase well, they're just going to keep moving.
Love that. That's so true. And a short plug, we do have a whole episode on your website. It's one of our earlier ones. It's one of our most popular ones too. So go listen to that one.
Fantastic.
I am curious, Raheem, what's the latest buzz about some technology, like some new technology? Like I mentioned the tractor beam, but what are you hearing in the industry?
No,
Five.
I think RaFa would be the next one. Is as we see a big shift from primary markets into secondary and tertiary markets, that's where the availability is. That's where the opportunities are. For us to be able to continue to move there, we need a software piece that can help manage these properties and give us visibility on what's happening at these properties. Email, and just using, messaging or chats, it's outdated. You can't do that if you want to manage a property. There's just too many moving pieces. So the RaFa system is almost like a project manager, communication piece. It's the walkthrough. It gives us the visibility of what's happening at the properties, and what the properties look like. It gives us all of that in one piece. So I would definitely say that would be the next cutting edge technology that's coming around.
Nice.
Cool. One last question. Raheem, who should we tap next to be our next guest?
I would go after Bill.
Oh yeah? Bill at Sparebox?
Yeah,
Tech?
go for it. He needs to showcase his technology for everybody.
Nice.
I love that.
Where can people find you?
LinkedIn, Raheem Amer. Find me on LinkedIn.
And probably on stage at the next SSA conference.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Awesome, guys. Well, hey, thanks for joining us again, Raheem.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity for having me on. I appreciate sharing some inputs. Hopefully it was beneficial.
It was awesome. Until next time, I'm sure we'll have you on again. And for everyone else, remember to go subscribe and listen to all of our other episodes. You can easily find them at selfstoragelab.com.